good afternoon, good evening, and welcome. My name is Catherine Good, and I head the Non-Governmental Liaison Service, which is known as NGLS, and is part of the Civil Society Unit in the Department of Global Communications at the United Nations. I want to thank you all for joining us as we wrap up 2020. We want to share with you our lessons learned, and there have been a lot of them this year for almost all of us, I'm sure. And we want to talk with you about how we've been engaging with our constituents during this time. It has been challenging. Most of you know that with the onset of the pandemic, the Civil Society Unit in the Department of Global Communications switched over very quickly to a virtual events format to avoid any interruption in the advocacy and engagement initiatives that we had been working on in partnership with a range of NGOs. We started with organizing online briefings in collaboration with our NGO partners, the first on health to honor our global heroes, nurses on the front line in observance of World Health Day. We have covered other areas dealing with the pandemic, such as racial discrimination, inspiring global action, effective communications, and the impact of the pandemic on people with disabilities and on youth. With the overflow of information out there, the Department of Global Communications has ensured accurate information is available to all. The department has focused on delivering up-to-date information with Verified, an initiative aimed at delivering trusted information. If you haven't already signed up to be a Verified ambassador, please do. It is aimed at providing life-saving advice and stories from the best of humanity. We know that you are doing that as well. The initiative invites the public to help counter the spread of COVID-19 misinformation by sharing fact-based advice with their communities. And subsequently, Pause was launched, which asks digital users to take the time to think about what they share before posting it online. We want to hear from you, our colleagues from civil society organizations associated with the UN Department of Global Communications. We launched a call last spring to hear what NGOs are doing to support communities during the COVID crisis. We will launch another call next week to gather stories on climate action. For our regular reporting exercise, which we used to call the annual review and now call the biennial review, we're asking organizations to report on the specific activities that they've taken during 2020 to combat the pandemic and to support their communities. Instead of asking for 3 activities this year, we're asking for only 1. There has to be some good news in 2020, right? Mm-hmm. Recently, we established a new group of members of the Youth Representatives Committee. The committee advises CSU and DGC at large on how to engage youth in civil society. In our new group, members represent NGOs in Greece, Argentina, India, Nigeria, Liberia, and the United States. We're happy to have with us today a mix of new members and alumni serving as our interviewers. Our speakers represent civil society and the UN partners. We look forward to hearing about the ways your organization has continued outreach and engagement with stakeholder partners and strengthening engagement in the new year. I'll now turn it over to our first 2 moderators, Michelle and Nipuna. Thank you.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. We are really excited to introduce and start panel number 1, Civil Society Advocacy and Engagement in COVID-19. We are on a tight schedule of 30 minutes for this panel, so we'll jump right into it. We will utilize 20 minutes for discussion with the panelists and retain 10 minutes for question and answers from the audience. First, we would like to introduce ourselves. My name is Michelle Leon, and I'm the youth representative for the World Development Foundation, as well as a member of the UN DGC Youth Representative Committee. And I'll now hand it over to my co-host, Nipuna.
Hello, everyone. My name is Nipuna Banpala, and I'm the Executive Director of I Volunteer International, and also a member of the UN DGC Youth Representative Steering Committee. Now I have the utmost honor of introducing to you our panelists. First, we have Andrea Rizzo, Strategic Planning Officer at the United Nations Environment Program. Manav Subodh, the co-founder of 1M1B, Fanny Munlin, the chair of the Global NGO Executive Committee, and Abdullah Ahmed Al-Shehi, the chief operating officer and acting director of Outreach Department at Dubai Cares. Michelle, let's get started with the first set of questions.
Thank you so much, Nipuna, for your introduction. And yes, let's get started. So our first question goes to Andre. Andre, we would like to ask you, can you tell us about how your outreach to your constituents was impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic?
Thanks, Michelle. Excellent question. Look, this year in UNEP, we've been working on the development of our main strategic document, the medium-term strategy. Now, this process normally requires quite a lot of consultation. So we consult with our member states as well as member states constituents, such as major groups and stakeholders. So imagine we had to virtualize this entire process that normally we try and do face-to-face, especially with our constituents in Nairobi, who are very, very active and very vocal. So this time around, we decided to overcome, obviously, this issue and virtualize the whole process. And this really allowed us to actually create a lot of opportunities for engagement. We organized what we call discovery sessions, which were basically brainstorming, thinking together sessions that allowed us to reach out to our member states, including the capitals in New York, which we don't often get to talk to directly now. Nairobi, but also a much broader range of major groups and stakeholders, youth organizations, faith-based organizations, CEOs from the private sector. So in the end, this really allowed us to create multiple opportunities, more opportunities than usual for engagement. And our participants were extremely pleased with the process. They actually appreciated the fact that these sessions could be even informally held, the opportunity to utilize virtual platforms to engage in breakout groups and have more intimate strategic discussion amongst them, and then report the results back to the plenary. So I think all in all, we realized that the virtuality of this process actually worked, and this can definitely allow for a much broader participation and reach out to stakeholders well beyond our usual constituents based in Nairobi. Back to you.
Thank you so much, Andre. I think we can all agree that virtual events has definitely helped us come together even more. No matter where we are in the world, no matter what time it is, we can all find ourselves together. But I would also like to ask you, what issues have you tried to overcome while creating these virtual platforms during COVID?
I think the one issue was definitely the different time zones that our constituents were based in. So that is obviously something that we had to deal with, and we would try to overcome by essentially scheduling these multiple sessions, hence the wider number of sessions that I spoke about before, to try to really accommodate all the participants based in different time zones to ensure that we could really all come together to have these very important discussions, despite the different time zones. Back to you.
Yes, I know we all have had problems during COVID trying to manage all the virtual conferences, but it's great that we have been able to overcome these obstacles. We're now going to go into our next question, so I will hand it over to you, Nipuna.
Yeah, thank you so much, Michelle and Andrea, for that wonderful discussion. My question, I would like to focus it to Abdullah. Tell us a little bit about the kind of events that you were able to organize during COVID, and specifically kind of discuss, how were they different from pre-COVID, right? How was the differentiation made, and how were the projects changed during COVID-19?
Thank you so much for this opportunity, and we are honored to be part of UNDGC. We have recently joined the organization, and we're trying to do our level best to get the best out of it. Just to give you a brief about Dubai Cares, we are an organization which is focused on providing children and youth with access to education. So most of our activities is happening in a school. The pandemic hit a lot of schools across the globe. And this did affect Dubai Care's work and regular programmatic intervention as well. So when the pandemic started hit in March, especially of this year, here in the UAE, we have organized a campaign called Education Uninterrupted to assure to the entire community that the education should continue regardless what the situation is and the pandemic is. And that's why we have launched a campaign in the UAE, which is in line with the government to further continue the distance learning across the UAE. And we had called the community to donate either financially or in kind by donating devices to support low-income families in the UAE to continue with their distance learning. Another initiative which we also launched recently was Humanity Inspired. Humanity Inspired was a campaign by Dubai Cares, Atlantis, Nepal, and the world-renowned artist Sasha Jaffrey. It came from his idea is to unite and connect children across the globe during this pandemic, which isolated a lot of children the globe. So from his idea to create the world's largest painting has ever been created on canvas, and in partnership with Guinness World Record, this art piece had received the official record of the largest art canvas in the world. And the idea is to tackle this devastating impact of virus on children and youth, which aims to raise more than $30 million to connect with 1 billion people around the world. And we are doing that through art and through our communication. This is also supporting our programmatic intervention when it comes to connectivity, which is something that we have learned across the pandemic, that connectivity is a very important component when it comes to providing programmatic intervention and activities in our world and our sphere of education as well. So this has shift our programmatic intervention and our activities in terms of the focus to provide children with access to education and continue their education either through online options or a blended option as well, and also to work with the global community and partners to deliver on that mission as well.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I want to echo a couple of things that you said, kind of the community coming together with donations, a lot of public-private partnerships to make sure that your vision, access for education, can still thrive during a COVID era. Thank you so much for providing us with that information. Now I would like to hand it back to Michelle to continue with our questions.
Thank you so much, Nipuna. So our next question goes to Manav. Manav, has this year taught you anything impactful about engagement through social media and other platforms?
Yes, a big one. In fact, thank you for the opportunity first, and great to be here. And thank you for the opportunity to share some of these insights with you. I would like to just say a small story. Like in February, first, I worked. I'm the co-founder of 1M1B, and one of the main objectives that we have is we mobilize young people to discover their passion, purpose, and then create an social action project so that the community is well served. And we do this program called the Future Leaders. And in February, I was in class, and we do this from school to school, and we mobilize young people to take social actions. And in February, I was in one of the schools taking a class, and I saw one of my favorite students missing. Her name is Mansi. And when I called her, she said, "My mom wants to talk to you." And she said, the mom said, "I can't send my child to your classroom because it's not safe." And we were in February and said, "No, it's safe, it's nice." And she said, "No, it's not going to be there. Like, you have to move online." And thanks to that, I just did that because I didn't want to lose that student. We moved online to Zoom all our session, and that was in February, and suddenly we went into the lockdown mode. And that reminds me of this book called Who Moved My Cheese, right? Which is basically embracing change. So I basically represent this organization where I spoil the average age, in the organization. Like most of the people I work with are young, and the average age is like 30. Maybe if I take myself out, the average age will go to 25 or 24. But we work with young people, and thanks to those young people, because we moved on to Zoom and we moved on to Facebook and we've got a lot of WhatsApp. So we used all those methods to reach out to young people. And, I was fortunate to have that, but we use a lot of Zoom now. We use a lot of Facebook and Instagram. The young people are on Instagram. I mean, last 6 months, we've got like 1,000 users who have signed on to Instagram and are following us. So I think we've been very fortunate, not that we were very intelligent, just that this person helped us, nudged us to move into Zoom much earlier. And because of that, we've been able to have 15,000 young people now who are on Zoom with us. And they are taking actions which has been outstanding. In fact, during the pandemic, because we moved on to Zoom and alternate form like Facebook, Instagram, we've been able to mobilize these young people who have distributed 16,000 essential kits to various communities. We've got a staggering like amount of 1 million masks that has got distributed because of these young people, and 50,000 PPE kits got distributed because all these people were together, and we were able to sort of come together and mobilize them to take action. Even when people were hungry in India, there were a lot of looks and corners where the essentials and the food supplies were not going. These young people made sure that the essentials and the food supply reaches. And thanks to Zoom, frankly, where we are right now. And but yeah, we've been sort of very fortunate that we got all these people on Zoom much before the lockdown, and we were able to use that to leverage and respond to the pandemic in India, which was, we had some very sad stories, but we were able to do that.
Thank you so much, Manav. I know that we've all been getting used to Zoom, finding out how it works. I think we're all experts by the end of this pandemic and Zoom. And I actually had the honor of working with your Future Leaders project, where I voted for Project E Akshara, who was providing English online classes. And then she went on to win after in the finalist panel. So that was really exciting to watch her progress. And I've already been messaging her that I wanted to work with her as well. So I think that's the beauty during this pandemic, is that we're able to use these social media platforms and work together in a much more civil way and mobilize ourselves in a different way. So I will now pass it over to Nipuna again.
Thank you, Michelle and Manav. This is actually a perfect segue to my question to Fanny. So we spoke about virtual sessions and also combining in-person sessions to do outreach to organizations, creating some sort of a hybrid mechanism. So Fanny, in your opinion, how can hybrid sessions that combine virtual and in-person participation strengthen our outreach? And how do you feel about the combined format going forward?
Well, I am supportive of the hybrid support system. As president of the Global NGO Executive Committee, we have been using the hybrid breed because many of our members on the board are in different parts of the world. So when we had our monthly meeting, we were doing in-person and Zoom. So I do believe that is a platform that we can use to go forward. Right now, we're doing everything in virtual, but what we've just done, which I'm very proud of, we had a UN dialogue, UN 75 dialogue with all NGOs in West Africa, with one of our board members who's on the board of the Global Executive Committee board, organized. And we were able to bring NGOs from the Cameroons, from Benin, from Ghana, all to participate in the dialogues. I think this idea of the virtual a way of doing business is really good. My idea is that we should continue, because it opens up an opportunity for lots of NGOs who will never be able to come to New York to the UN to participate in conferences. This is the best way to broaden our outreach to all NGOs. We have had a great deal of success in getting to NGOs who normally would not participate in any of our programs. So I feel very strongly about the hybrid system. I think it's workable. I think we should look forward to doing more. Of course, it takes planning, and I think we can do that, but I definitely support it. I was going to tell you about what I did with my own organization that I'm a member of. We had our national convention, and everyone would come sparsely. Our total audience was by 1,000 people. This year, we did everything virtual. We had 5,000 people, members of the organization, participating. And I think this is the way to go. I support it wholeheartedly.
Thank you so much, Fanny. I completely agree with you. Virtual programming has really allowed us to reach a lot of people across the globe. I really want to thank all of our speakers today in panel one, Andrea, Abdullah, Manav, and Fanny, for being here despite your very, very busy schedules to share your experience with us. We are cutting close on time, but before we hand it over to the next panel, we have a poll we want all the participants to take part of. And Crystal, if you will launch the poll now, we will give a couple of minutes for all the participants to put your comments on the poll, and then we will share it and discuss it a little bit. And while you're answering the poll, if you have any questions, please go ahead and put it on the chat. Time permitting, we will see if we can get some questions asked from our panelists before we wrap up panel one. Okay, I think we will give about another 10 seconds for the poll. If you haven't put your answers, please do it now. Okay, Crystal, if we can share the results so that all the participants can see.
Funding.
I think there was a little bit of a technical difficulty that all the answers are not showing, but there was about 62%. The highest was funding in the previous results that we got. So funding looks like to be one of the challenges that organizations and civil societies have faced during the pandemic. And I think while virtual opportunities have allowed organizations to reach out to a lot of people to get them engaged, whereas before COVID, you couldn't, there were a lot of physical barriers where people had to, transport to different locations. With that, there have been a lot of funding issues with organizations losing funding and some grant opportunities closing in on specific programs they want to fund. With that thought, I want to hand it over to Michelle to see if we have any questions on the chat to open it up to our panelists if we have some time.
Thank you so much, Nipuna. I did see everyone was voting in the polls, and it was very interesting. I was trying to vote myself. So now we're going to go into a little Q&A, and we're going to ask from one of our speakers to go ahead and answer this. This question comes from Rosaleni Upinas, and the question is, what is a lesson you hope institutions and governments learned from society in COVID? In the COVID response. So we would now like to ask either one of our speakers during panel number one who would like to answer this question.
I will answer that question. I think what we have learned as a society is that the interconnectedness of communities. And I think through the support of communities, the community activities that have been going on in spite of COVID-19, we have been able to maintain that coherence between what we do and the people whom we serve. And that's been the driving force behind what we do at our organization, the Global NGO Executive Committee, and the organization that I represent at the UN. And what else I think was really, really good is that the support for the frontline workers, that was encouraging, and that we should continue. Those individuals who were out there when I was able to stay home were doing a magnificent job. And I truly believe that this humanity, this outpouring of concerns for others should be maintained. I think that is the heart of what I've learned from this pandemic. It's the humanity that we can come together, different ethnic groups, different languages, different perspectives on life, and yet support each other going forth.
Thank you so much, Fanny, for those words. Would any of our other speakers like to add to this question?
I can try.
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, Andrea, in case you want.
Oh, thanks, Manav. No, I was just going to say, building on what Fanny said, that this is very much of a human crisis. I think from the perspective of environmental civil society groups, I think this is also obviously an environmental crisis at the same time. I hope, our hope is obviously that institutions or government will have learned that in order to deal with this crisis, we have to look at the human aspect of it as well as the environmental aspect and the health aspect of it together. I think this is coming out very, very clearly in the need for developing a concerted response to the crisis. Back to you.
Thank you so much, Andre. And I think Manav wanted to answer to this question as well. So I will open.
Besides what has been shared by my fellow panelists, one of the things that has really come to light is, recognizing the civil society and a lot of smaller organizations, a lot of small NGOs that have done great work. In fact, this has been a time where we had to cut through the noise and really identify the right people who are contributing to the grassroots. And I think this has been kind of in some way finding the right organization who needs to be supported by the government in the future. So there has been a mindset. There are only certain set of bigger organizations that needs to be funded, that needs to be supported, because they have been legacy organizations. But there have been a lot of people like myself who have sort of left their corporate job and have contributed and have taken a decision to contribute to the grassroots. And it's just not one and one B, but we have seen so many other organizations that have really gone out and done really impactful work that needs to be recognized and needs to be given a government platform so that they could really sustain that work. I think sustenance will be a big one. And as we see, the biggest challenge has been funding. So if the government can come and really recognize these nonprofits who have done great work, give them a platform so that they get the limelight or in some way from the larger corporation to receive donation and CSR funds, I think that would be a big one, because we've seen really, in black and white, which of the organization have really contributed and the people that have been impacted because of their efforts.
Thank you so much, Manav. And now we're going to go ahead and thank all of our speakers for their time, for their questions and answers, and for being a part of us with First Panel for this morning. I will now hand it over to our next moderators for panel number 2. Our next moderators are going to be Grano and Nisha Misra.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Nisha Mirza, and currently I'm working with the COVID-19 research and outreach at up in Colombia. And I have been at the Youth Steering Committee representing my NGO, Voices of Bangla. Now to my co-host, Caitlin.
Thank you, Nisha. Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to be here. As Nisha said, I'm Grano. I'm a youth representative for Pathways to Peace. I'm also a member of the Department of Global Communications Youth Steering Committee, as many of us here. And I was also the co-chair for the Youth Subcommittee for the 68th United Nations Civil Society Conference in Salt Lake City. I am so honored and excited to be here with you all today and think we have a great session. And I really hope that you all enjoy it. We have some amazing and inspirational speakers joining us for today's discussion, and I would just love to give them a great introduction. First, we have Youth Representative Dania Itani Musa from Sigma Nursing. We also have Venerable Yu Wang, Director of UN Affairs from Buddha's Light International Association, and Patrick Shirata, Director from UN Programming from the World Development Foundation, and Juan Pablo Salas Garcia, Spokesperson, Education USA Alumni, and DGC Youth Representative Steering Committee. I'd like to pass it back to Nisha.
Thank you for the intro, Caitlin. I'm gonna jump right into the question. So my first question is to Dania Musa. What kind of partnerships did you develop and around what issues related to the pandemic? Also, do you see these partnerships continuing beyond the vaccine?
So we were actually in a very interesting situation. We were nurses. So we have about 135,000 nurses worldwide in about 90 different countries. So we were really on the front line. So we really prioritized partnerships that our members will really benefit from. So I can tell you, the toll that the pandemic has taken on us has been beyond measure. The exhaustion was definitely real. The trauma was real. The loneliness was real. I know I didn't see my family for a few months, but we really tried to prioritize partnerships related to ethical distress, mental health, and leadership. Unfortunately, many new grad nurses, so young nurses, were really thrown into positions with no support, no training, and here they are on the front lines, COVID nurses, and they have no idea what to do. So Sigma really stepped up and really prioritized partnerships for their benefit. For an example, they really partnered with leading subject experts to really provide interactive opportunities to equip nurses with the tools they need. So like previous speakers said, we really benefited from the virtual aspect because we were able to host many webinars. And it's really cool because we got to open it to all nurses, not just Sigma nurses. And so a lot of them really focused on helping nurses deal with the effects of the pandemic. So I think we can all kind of agree that, COVID-19, the stay-at-home orders, the physical distancing has made Sigma, as well as other civil society organizations, more dependent on digital tools when it comes to connection and communication at the local, regional, and global levels. So I'm really looking forward to kind of seeing how this change will kind of shape our future.
Thank you for
too. I think you asked me if these partnerships will be continuing beyond the vaccine. I honestly, I personally don't know because we don't know how the world is going to look like in 5 years or how the pandemic will really reshape our lives. But whether we do continue these partnerships now or beyond COVID, I really want to highlight just how important the voices of young people are essential in navigating this time of uncertainty. As we see a new way of working and being in the world, we really have a great opportunity to transform the way young people engage in tackling the COVID-19 pandemic and future emergencies. I really do think, I'm a youth representative and the youth that I do know, as well as interact with at the UN and other global events, we are more than prepared to rise to the challenges and drive change if we are heard, empowered, engaged, and given the chance to lead. Like Manav said with the Future Leaders Project, if you give them the opportunity, they will step up, they will create positive change at the local and global levels. So I'm really excited to see young people with the tools and opportunities so they can continue coming up with unique solutions to address the post-COVID-19 world, whatever that is.
Thank you so much for your input. My next question is to Mr. Yu Wang. And what are some of the challenges you and your organization face working, reaching out with global youth? And also, can you give us one example of how you solve this issue of working with youth globally?
Hey, thank you. Thank you to moderators and giving the opportunity. Yes, Buddha's Law International Association, we as a faith-based organization, a lot of work, our work is underground. And then we meet people face to face, and then we interact with our community daily on the many levels. And for administrative meetings and the prayers and then the rituals and the classes, and for a lot of volunteers activities, our biggest challenges, like many other organizations, and then has been then change in how we have traditionally handle and those activities and then skills, and then still keep our youth people engaged. So even before this pandemic, and then we already acknowledged that some challenges already exist, and then how to reaching out the young people. And then now with the pandemic, and then we also seeing those issues is kind of magnificently, and such as the scheduling or access, engaging the young people to inviting the new members, new peoples, their friends, and then to hear some new ideas or to deal with this kind of global, sense of anxiety. So in this 2020, the past, almost the end, and how do we share on our objectives, the humanities, Buddhisms, and the values, and then to address the paradox of the not time yet, the too much time, as well as in the new sense of worries and uncertainty. So our youth, and then they developed kind of, they really develop some good ideas, and then for them to try to creatives their own existing program, but as everybody knows now is a move online and to the Zoom, and then to even Google Classroom, their Google Meets, and then all different this kind of medias they can use. They can put on their curriculums and then their programs. So they develop even the cooking class and move on the Zoom. If I am able to share later on, and they have their own cooking class. The show there, how the dishes there are really wonderful, and they also develop like in the small regional program. They can reach out their friends there. I think there's some partial of the benefits, I think they can connect it with all different continents, friends together. So they come out with like over close to 1,000 members meeting online, and then to get conference, do their conference communication, and then share a lot of good ideas. So this is they already raised up some good quality events, and then with the broader groups, and then and all the talented and then great ideas. So specifically, when we developed the worldwide, and then some forums for people to discuss, and then their faith, their family, their career, and so this is made young people to feel they're listened, that they become, they can be seen, they can be recognized, and then so they can be more engaged now. So I think maybe from the beginning it was difficult to get them to used to it, because some of them also had the living anxiety, is like because the modern technology being too fast, to develop too fast, they cannot catch it or to learn very well. They might feel being outdated, but now they can getting it better and better, even like us.
So,
So this is, yeah.
So Wang, and so to summarize, you said that you have been resilient so far, right, with the pandemic, and also you said they use technology a lot to be remain connected, correct?
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's right. Thank you so much.
Back to Caitlin.
Yeah, I can definitely identify with everything that was shared. I mean, Danya's out there working with people that are on the front line. It's a completely different atmosphere from all of those that are sitting home. We're saying, oh, I'm lonely. And like, that's real too. Yuang was saying how people have learned to adapt. And it just shows you how this one problem can affect everyone in such different ways. And just, it warms my heart to hear that so many different people are working in the different aspects, trying to make it better for all of us. Because I know 2020 has been rough to say the least. So I want to move on and put on our next panelist, Patrick Shirata, who is a good friend of mine, worked very closely with, and just is an amazing person overall. My first question for Patrick is, what were some of the challenge? Oh, I'm sorry, I'm reading the wrong thing. Can you tell us civil society organizations have been able to reach young people to help them deal with the effects of the pandemic? What type of projects and campaigns did your organization develop in order to combat these problems?
Thanks so much, Caitlin. It's great seeing you again, if only virtually. Let me not try to repeat what everyone has been saying, because it's been very good information, and I'm afraid we're going to get at a point of repetition soon. Maybe I could approach this from an intergenerational point of view and offer maybe 3 or 4 quick examples. Pre-pandemic, UN was talking about just before that certain ideas were identified before the pandemic. I wanted to mention that last year in 2019, in early summer, late spring, the World Assembly of Youth and the Media Education Center focused on a pre-pandemic issue of media and information literacy. Catherine Good spoke about this at the very beginning of our session with a pause campaign. We see disinformation only growing in this difficult time where we're separated. And I was very pleased to be a keynote speaker with World Assembly of Youth in Malaysia and the Belgrade-based Media Education Center, which had their program at the EU's City of Youth in Novi Sad, Serbia as well, dealing with this information. So I think there's a real parallel campaign that's growing now among young people to counter disinformation and malinformation. Misinformation, of course, is just wrong and can be corrected, but disinformation is calculated lies, and malinformation is meant to ruin people who are actually telling the truth. And it's great to see an intergenerational relationship between seasoned reporters and journalists and those who are youth journalists tackling this issue even more so now, because the MIL, Media Information Literacy campaign at UNESCO and the Pause campaign of the UN have only been growing during this issue. Way in the back, in 2002, I began the Youth Assembly at the United Nations, which became a great success. And I was with the group from 2002 to 2015. For me, it was really indicative of where we need to go in the future. What made it successful between 2002 and 2015 was our assiduous desire to constantly look at partnerships. We brought in youth leaders from around the world and paired them with UN staff, UN leadership, leaders from the corporate sector, and celebrities and special guests from around the world. And it was that mix working off of each other for specific goals that youth leaders helped us determine, with a predominantly youth-led staff and an intergenerational group also behind them, I think made that a successful program during those years. On the global education, global NGO group that I'm on now with Fanny, and Fanny may have mentioned this, I'm not sure. Nadine Compton, who is one of our youth voices and a board member on the GNEC, is doing a program now called Localizing Climate Justice. It'll be December 19th at 1 p.m. I ask you all to get onto that Zoom. And again, it looks to me like a wonderful opportunity for intergenerational sharing, with many of us in the NGO community able to speak about how we have looked at climate justice in the past, and of course, the young Greta Thunbergs of the world who are now leading us into the future. And generally, I've been trying more and more, I guess, since I departed the Youth Assembly, from looking at youth in a silo. Maybe it's because I'm getting older. And so I do look at intergenerational questions often. This past Sunday, I was charged with putting together a Human Rights Day event for United Nations Association in our Westchester, New York chapter. And we brought together some very interesting people, including Howard Diallo and other serious adults who addressed the question of human rights. But one of the speakers who was pre-recorded in our session was Millie Bobby Brown. And half of you don't know her. The other half know her as a star of Stranger Things, and Enola Holmes, and many other opportunities that she's had to shine. She has an Instagram following of 40 million. And most of our Zooms like this one will have 100, 150 people. We had 14,000. We couldn't even use the Zoom platform. We had to really create and work with our own. But it was the young people who were drawn in by the intergenerational interest in Human Rights Day. And in particular, we work with a group called Rock Your World, and I'll end there. Rock Your World is a series of diplomats from Creative Visions, an NGO on the West Coast, that seeks to reinterpret the Human Rights Declaration, the Declaration of Human Rights, creatively, and invites middle and high school students to do what they can with the 30 points of the UDHR. And we have seen amazing results from that. So those are my intergenerational comments and chops that I offer you. Thanks for asking, Caitlin.
Thank you, Patrick. Yeah, I definitely think that's a main component. You know, we are always talking about youth, but intergenerational dialogues has been a conversation of United Nations for some time. And I think that it's really important because I know as a college student, sometimes I'm like, I'm lost. I don't know how to do this. I might know how to work it on the online end, but coming from the information end, it's like, what do I do? I still need guidance. So I definitely think that's great for you to share. Thank you, Patrick. So we're going to move on to the last speaker for this panel, Juan, who is an amazing person. He's always outshining everybody in his field. So his question for Juan is, in your opinion, how do you think youth in general have handled the challenges that have been presented by the pandemic? Do you think you can share some of the innovative ways that they've overcome these obstacles, led to great results?
Thank you, Caitlin and Nisha, and everyone who's been working on the preparations for this very important briefing for our last year. And I really want to mention how young people have really taken on the leading role to address these challenges of 2020. And I give you a very few examples about this. Young people at the forefront of this pandemic is especially the young nurses like Diana, the doctors and everyone that worked in the health system. Youth has really been strong in combating these year's challenges as they have offered support to other generations that are of course more vulnerable to this pandemic. And also, I think that young people has really shown empathy and solidarity. The increased support amongst our neighbors. For instance, in Colombia, I'll give you an example. I experienced the hospitality of many young people by supporting families with meals, food, basic resources, and not only with friends or neighbors, but also with our own family. So I thought that it was really important for me to mention that young people's empathy and solidarity was really shown during 2020. And of course, the increased social media coverage of our conversations that were usually, conversations that were pretty much host in person. Like if we talk about the New York office, young people, of course, now that they have been taking on this leading role in social media coverage. And I give you an example, the International Youth Day of this year, we had such a big increased audience from different regions of the world. And something like this didn't happen before. And I think it's because this pandemic challenged us in being more connected with one another in different places around the world. And also, I think one of the highlights is also the UN75 campaign, because was really led by young people. And this, the team that led on this campaign was really able to bring so many young perspectives from around the world and was able to just picture an idea of how the UN should look like in the future. So these are just really few examples of how young people have really challenged, how really take on these challenges in 2020. But I think there is still some stuff that we need to work on. And one of them is that what remains unanswered is that have we really been able to give space to those vulnerable communities, to those vulnerable young people that do not have access to basic resources or to utilize technology to bring their voices and perspectives to these platforms and initiatives. I think there is so many young people out there still that throughout the whole year, they weren't able to maybe connect through a classroom, connect through back to school because they didn't have access to basic resources. So I think the question still remains unanswered. And we need to find ways that to include young people that do not have access to these basic resources and this basic technology that they should be able to have access to. And also, of course, the increased unemployment amongst youth. Before the COVID, before the pandemic, of course, young people's unemployment rates were very, very high, but now it's even higher. And as we see on the World Youth Report, they mention how unemployment among young people represents one of the greatest global challenges. And they mentioned that in recent estimates suggest that 600 million jobs would have to be created over the next 15 years to meet youth employment needs. So those things are still unanswered, and we need to find ways to work. And I'm glad to see so many civil society representatives and colleagues really so passionate and so involved with this, the challenges of this year. But I think for next year, we need to continue addressing those challenges that have not really been taken into account. So just to summarize that, but I think it's just really important that we continue, of course, working together and continue including young people in the conversation and the decision making. Thanks so much, Caitlin, and thank you to everybody.
Thank you, Juan. Yeah, I definitely agree. As a college junior myself, the job force, a lot of my friends who just recently graduated, it's scary. Applying to internships last summer, a lot of mine got cut in the city. I unfortunately wasn't able to participate in those programs. And I've seen that they're saying, unfortunately, we're not able to offer you this position because we are hiring our own employees. And that's something that's scary and affects every single person. And I think that it really has pushed us to think outside the box, like you mentioned, and that everyone's mentioned. And yes, it's good, but it's also scary. And I think that's something that we have to keep in mind, like you said. So right now we're going to be moving on to a poll. I'd like to thank all the speakers for their contributions. So if Crystal could put the poll up, we'll give everybody a few seconds to answer that, and then we'll share the results. Great, I see a lot of you guys are voting. We'll give you guys another 10 seconds if you haven't already had the chance. The numbers are moving a little bit. Okay, so I see from the results so far that the majority of people, 83%, said the answer to the question was yes. If anybody can't see this, the question is, do you feel your primary role as a civil society organization or member has shifted during the last 9 months? That's something that I definitely agree. I mean, just from the steering committee, moving our meetings to online, you're not seeing people, creating virtual events like this, I think just the way that you interact with people has changed. Nevertheless, interaction with civil society. So thank you for everyone who responded to that. And then we're going to take a couple questions from the chat. One of the first questions I have is from Stevie Harrison. For youth in overcoming the challenges of the pandemic, COVID-19 has threatened the progress of relevant SDGs such as Goal 4, education, and Goal 8, employment. Not to mention that there is also related to the implementation of Youth 2030 policy guidance. How do you respond to this? I think Danya wanted to take that question.
Yeah. So Steve, your question is so important. When I read it, I was like, okay, this is the kind of question that I love engaging with because it really does highlight just how important youth engagement is. So as we realize, the pandemic really threatened to reverse years of progress on the goals you mentioned, as well as, poverty, healthcare, education, hunger. And it really just suddenly disrupted implementation towards these goals and turned back years of progress. So while it did threaten this progress, I also think it really highlighted just how urgent their achievement is. And so the principles on which we really built the SDGs were it's really about building back the post COVID-19 recovery. So we really need to kind of heed on the lessons learned from this wake-up call and formulate the kind of transitions needed to build a healthier, more resilient, and a more sustainable world. And I really do think that it's only possible through multi-stakeholder cooperation, including young people, as we forge pathways needed to create a more livable world. Sorry. Young people hold the key to the world's future, and young people are essential partners. So as we look back into 2020, we see many things that went wrong, but let's use this as an opportunity to see when youth engagement took center stage.
Thank you, Danya. We have another question that I think is very inspirational and from one of my mentors, Mr. George Anthony from the Modern Day Prep Global Institute of Pathways to Peace. His question is, how can you create more caring communities through different venues of positive action? I'm not sure which one of our panelists would like to take that question.
Let me jump in. I think, as has been mentioned, certainly by my colleagues here, we need to start thinking about the next phase. I'm rather bullish on the next phase. I think if COVID hadn't arrived, our president in the United States might have won the election. And then I think COVID said, hold my beer. I think that COVID has dramatically changed the future for us. But I think that what we're going through now is merely temporary. I think post-pandemic, we had a rather healthy economy. Now it's to make a healthy society. That will be the next step. And I think we need to start planning that now. I am working with some youth and members of my own team at World Development Foundation and elsewhere to look at the future. We're putting together a conference now with leaders from the IBM, from their AI division, and Deloitte, looking at how do we deliver humanitarian aid during the next pandemic while mitigating risks that occurred during this pandemic. AI and Watson and IBM are very keen to work on this. Indeed, the outgoing CEO, Ginny Rometty at IBM, just recently won the SDG Award for businesses from our Secretary General. And Deloitte is known for mitigating risk in business. So how do we mitigate risk as society? How do we create a more inclusive and better society to deal with risks that will come forth in the future? By bringing together youth working on the program, seasoned professionals in the civil society realm, and the corporate community, I think we can face the future without looking to get back to normal, but to move from where we are to a better normal in the future.
Thank you, Patchy, for that response. And I think we have time for one more question. The question is from Louis Mancholi, Program Assistant Research Children East Africa. Their question is, how are CSOs getting involved in rebuilding a post-COVID-19 world for the achievement of the SDGs by 2030? I think Patrick just touched a little bit on that, but if anybody else wanted to add their perspective.
Well, I think I'd love to address that. I think for the youth and then our youth groups and then even our generations and maybe all the generations already learned from this pandemic. And then in the Buddhism, we say that impermanence is like there's nothing will stay normal or forever. And then we always have to get prepared and then to moving forward. But the most important thing is we have to learn from the experience. We think that the current things happens. So I think for everybody should get all prepared and then move on and then to learn better from the situation. So we just need to get support with all the organizations and everyone and look into the positive side and then to sincerely and then to support. I think there should be no problem for, there is always problem in the front, but we will have no problem to face it and then be strong and then together. Thank you. Back to you all.
Thank you. Yeah, I definitely think just sticking together is the most important part going through all of this. 2020, like I said, has been rough. It's been tough and it's beaten us all down. But from what we've heard here, everyone's amazing stories, the obstacles everyone's overcome, no matter what sector they work in or what they hope to achieve, everyone has stuck together and had hope through it all. So I just like to thank everybody for everything they've accomplished today and just for being here. 2020 has been it, and everyone just showing up here just shows how resilient everyone is. I'm truly inspired by everything that was shared, and I hope our discussion was really great for everyone listening in the audience, and thank you for your questions. I'd like to pass it on. I was going to pass it on to us.
Thank you, Caitlin.
Thank you, Nisha. I'd like to pass it on to my very good friends. I know Nisha and I have worked very closely with the ISHU in Cairo for the next discussion for panel 3.
Thank you very much, Caitlin and Nisha, for the panel. Greetings, everyone, to distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, and fellow youth advocates and global citizens. My name is Aishwarya Narasimha Devara, and I'm an NGO youth representative to Medical Women's International Association, which is an NGO dedicated to empowering women in the field of medicine. I'm also an alumnus of the DGC Youth Representative Steering Committee, and alongside with Caitlin, had the honor of being a co-chair of the Youth Subcommittee for the DGC 68th Civil Society Conference in 2019. After listening to the esteemed speakers from the previous panels, we would like to present the next segment, which focuses on a positive outlook. With that being said, I would like to pass the floor to my esteemed panelist, Cairo. Cairo, I pass the floor to you.
Thank you so much, Aishu. All right, my name is Cairo Eubanks. I'm a youth representative for New Future Foundation, Inc. I'm also on the UNDGC Steering Committee, and it's absolutely a pleasure and honor to be a part of our third panel. So our focus in this panel is looking ahead as we get ready for change. So we want to make sure and we look forward to all of our panelists providing knowledge and information as it relates to preparing for 2021 and a hopefully pandemic-free world, all right? So our first, before I go further, I do want to introduce our panelists. First, we have Olumide, one second. Olumide Idowu, who is a climate expert from the International Climate Change Development Initiative, ICCDI. Margot Lazora, President and Chair of the NGO Committee on Sustainable Development, New York, and co-founder and CSO at SDG Impact Awards. Next, we have Jadea Spencer, who is an executive director of the International Youth Leadership Institute, IYLI. And last but certainly not least, we have Naleen Ahmed, who is a program management officer at the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs, DESA. So the first question I have for you, Olumide, is how did the pandemic change the way that we've been planning meetings and events?
Yeah, thank you very much. I hope everybody can hear me very well.
We can hear you.
Okay, good. So thanks to everybody, thanks to the panelists as well, my colleague that will be coming up. Yeah, basically, if you look at it very well, the global pandemic have really contributed a lot of things to the world, and everybody's been affected. But looking at what is happening presently, you will notice that it has actually been able to get more people inclusive when it comes to their gender, when it comes to their role, and when it comes to how we see people as age. And I would say because of this COVID-19, what has actually happened is that a lot of people, we've been able to identify data in a way whereby it's very, very, accurate. For instance, some data have been able to gather in a way whereby using tools online rather than people coming together. Then secondly, it has also helped us to drive innovative solutions digitally. And it has also give that assurance that digital communication is very, very key, and it can actually go far and wide across the value chain. And also looking at the household and communities, most of them don't have access to these tools to actually connect and bridge the gap. And that is why some of some organizations and some activities have been going on ground to make sure that they translate all this online conversation to engage the local community and some households that are actually affected and they are not able to get in touch to this data into this platform that we're using to speak as I'm talking. Because if you look at, it's not everybody that have the opportunity to come online and have this kind of engagement. So some part of the organizations are actually using their own on-ground skills and tools to engage and make communication very, very easy for them. So the global pandemic have really hit the world badly, but I can say that the civil society, the youth organizations have been able to make use of the social media tools and make use of the digital tools to actually connect and build resilience where it's supposed to happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I love that you just touched on the inclusivity that it's been able to provide. Can you give a specific example of maybe a programming that your organization has had and how it's been able to be inclusive in terms of perhaps regions, gender, age, culture, and more?
Okay, thank you very much. My organization actually embarked on a project in a community called Max Up Community. And Max Up Community cannot be done online because one of the precaution of the WHO was for us to start using face masks, and you can't use face masks on digital space while you're covering your mouth. And so we see the need that while we are talking about this precaution, we need to take the WHO and the NCDC in your country is giving to us. We decided to come up with an initiative called Max Up Community, where we came up with a marks to be shared accordingly to the communities. And you can't share marks on social media, you can't share marks on digital platform. So we have to look for a way to move closer to this community, use our different volunteers to actually meet all these people by also practicing all the guidelines of social distancing, using face masks, 2 meters stretch. So it's something that we can't do digitally, but we try to look for innovative way to also make sure that we follow the guidelines, and we also make sure that the people that are in the local community also find that opportunity to engage on what is actually going on physically and what is going on digitally. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for answering that. And I have one quick story before I pass it over to Aishu, but it was such a pleasure to have been the guest virtual judge for 1M, 1B, 1 million, 1 billions Pitch Fest. And I have to say that I had that event first thing, and then 2 hours later, I was doing an interview here in Florida. How many people can say that they were in India and then Florida within 2 hours? That is what the internet has done, has been able to create opportunities for people to virtually be present. With that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Aishu.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tkaria. I must say, I do agree with you that the internet has brought the world to become closer. We would now like to ask the next question to Miss Margot Lazaro. So, Margot, building on lessons learned from 2020, how can we strengthen UN and civil society engagement in the new year?
So thank you, Ashu and Cairo. Yes, so I'm Margot Lazaro, President and Chair of the NGO Committee on Sustainable Development New York, co-founder of the SDG Impact Awards Community, and Director of Human Relations for Global Family. We've all heard many of us have pivoted to utilizing virtual platforms during the pandemic, which allowed us to increase our global outreach. And we as our committee actually continued holding monthly meetings. We didn't stop. In May of this year, the NGO Committee on Sustainable Development New York, which is a coordinating partner of UN 2020, now being renamed the Coalition for the UN We Need, we collaborated with our CSO partners to hold the UN 75 People's Forum with participants from around the world, which including leading global activists, ambassadors, and Maher Nasser, Director of Outreach for the UN Department of Global Communication, joined us. We addressed also the UN 75 political declaration from the member states that was for the UN 75 General Assembly, and we created our own People's Declaration. We are now holding, we will now be holding in the annual People's Forum, again in spring of 2021. You're all invited. So last week on December 9th, we held a first global town hall for civil society engagement, which included representatives from 5 permanent missions to the UN. Maher Nasser again joined us, and we had Youth Inclusive in this meeting joining us globally. So we look forward to holding 3 to 4 global town halls in 2021. And again, you're all invited to those. And we suggest that UN CSO's members continue to take a lead in creating opportunities to hold these virtual and in-person, perhaps hybrid meetings with global agendas. And we invite colleagues from all of our colleagues to be a part of that initiative. Take a lead, whether you're youth, intergenerational, let's all take a lead. So I think what we learned was we can invite the UN to come to us, you know? They will come, and they will come, and they're happy to be there. If they can fit it into their schedule with all of their many virtual meetings, they will come. So I encourage everyone to do so and work in collaboration in an inclusive, intergenerational way. And, you know, again, with all stakeholders, invite everybody to your meetings and cover topics related to the UN and the global perspective. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Margot. And I must say, I've had the privilege alongside with other colleagues working with you. And I must say, we're all always inspired by the insurmountable work that you do in putting together these 4. So we thank you and your team for always being very inclusive in your discussions, and definitely look forward to more in the future. With that, I would now like to pass it back to Cairo, who will ask our next question.
Can I just say one more thing? I think one thing that I wanted to say, because I thought I had a second question. It's really important to also include in some of our topics the impact of the pandemic on people, millions of people possibly called the long haulers. Okay, so the vaccination is one thing, but there's a whole other piece coming up. And we are actively working with entrepreneurs and scientists now to come up with solutions for that. Because as Patrick was saying, what is the next step here? So to be prepared for the future, but we also, I think it's a human right. We need to take care of the people. So CSOs can do that. Youth can do that. Let's step up to the plate and make that difference. Thank you.
Thank you very much, apologies. So thank you for always that call to action, and absolutely, we shall continue the momentum in the future. So yes, Cairo, I pass the floor to you. Cairo, I think unfortunately we're having some, yes, now we can hear you.
You can hear me now? Okay, fantastic. Guess what? We're here. No problem at all. Thank you so much for that. All right. So the question I was going to ask actually led in really well with what Margot was so eloquently saying about collaborations. The question that I have for Jadea is, what are your expectations for DGC outreach and advocacy to civil society in 2021?
Thank you, Kyle, so much for asking that. So to introduce myself, hey, everybody, coming to you live from Brooklyn, New York. I represent the International Youth Leadership Institute as its executive director, and we're blessed to serve youth of African descent all over countries in the African diaspora. And so our whole thing is, you know, empowering youth to make the world a better place wherever you are. And so as far as like expectations for, you know, DGC's engagement with CSOs and civil society organizations in 2021, what I have, expectations / hopes. What I know I really would love to see, and which I'm already starting to see, you know, even in this very conversation, is to see this department enable and help the UN to do more to make space for, advocate for, and like uplift the voices of like vulnerable and marginalized populations. I was so happy today to get to hear from a representative of 135,000 nurses, knowing good and well, like, you know, that this is like a profession and field that is just underappreciated around the world, when our lives are literally in your hands. Also, you know, our lives are in the hands of the people who, you know, actually facilitate food supply chains. Like those are things that, you know, I feel like aren't talked about enough in many spaces. And so just literally making more space for civil society, both in person at the UN headquarters, but now because we are enabled virtually to do that as well. And I see also just like more opportunities, but with opportunities come challenges. So like those things too. So like, you know, I'm thinking about people with disabilities who now, by virtue of not having to, in terms of range of motion, having to move around so much via the virtual work that we're doing. But there's also, you know, issues that come up with engaging virtually with disability as well. So we want to make sure that even like our sites are accessible, our events are accessible, and that we're able to provide that, you know, closed captioning. Those are very small things. They might sound small, but they like enable everyone to engage and for us to live up to the promise of the United Nations. And we need to truly be representative of and make space for all people. I also want to just like point out that, you know, okay, I didn't mention this before, but I am a founding co-chair of the Youth Representative Steering Committee. It is an absolute honor that I'm just so very proud of and grateful for, to see, you know, the work that we're continuing to do. Back in 2016, right before the Youth Representative Steering Committee was established, we had the blessing of creating the very first youth declaration to come from a conference from this department. And so back in 2016, I'm gonna just read this to you, just check this out, because I was thinking about this. All right, I'm gonna just read 3 bullet points of what we urge member states to do. Okay, it's just a 2-page document. Highly encourage everyone to check this out. Okay, check this out, boom. We urge member states to, all right, check this out. Commit to providing high-speed internet to all countries in the world and support technological literacy of all. Recognize the emergence of e-learning as a legitimate form of education and transnational qualification. I just want, okay, just pointing that out. Okay. Point number 2 that I wanted to bring up, support an enabling environment for public and private media to provide factual information to educate the population, as youth are the largest consumers of media. Number 3, the last one that I'll bring up, assist in the education of parents and families to raise their consciousness to the needs of children and youth, to the importance of education for all, as well as human development needs such as nutrition, hygiene, and healthcare. I just want to say we explicitly called that out and called on member states to do that, and that was almost 5 years ago. Y'all could, I mean, our member states could have listened to youth and been better prepared for this very moment, which no one, anticipated. But there's this great Chinese proverb that says the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago, and the second best time is right now. So now that we're in this environment, now that we have the blessing to be alive, to even be on a Zoom call on this day, on December 17th, 2020, is not really something to take for granted. Let us use this time in this moment to make space for ourselves, to make space for others, and to actually, concretize our work and our talk into action. Because I mean it, like our member states really could just listen to us like 5 years ago, and we maybe we wouldn't, be here right now. But there's a blessing and opportunity in this moment as well while we're together. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for answering that. And I would say I concur completely, especially as it relates to e-learning platforms. Nowadays, if you don't have access to the internet and you're doing distance learning, how are you supposed to get your knowledge? How are you supposed to be able to progress academically? So I completely agree with you, completely. All right, if you could please give me in just a minute or so, so that we can be able to start the question and answer. I still want to hear what you have to say, Judea. How does the Decade for Action for the SDGs fit into your expectations for 2021?
Yeah, briefly. I mean, I think I'm on the page, and I get the vibe that we all might be on the same page, that the SDGs are more important now than ever. There's just certain, the world really needs to just put more focus on them if we are to achieve our goals. Honestly, 2030 feels too late, especially in regards to SDG number 13 in terms of, climate action. No hunger. These are things that are more prevalent and uplifted and just more front and center now than ever before. So what I would just say is that to everyone who's here on a Zoom, don't just be here to listen to these great speakers and these amazing conversations, learning about what's happening all over the world. Like actually, take action. If you're here and you're not involved with an organization that's working toward helping out with an SDG in your region or around the world, join one. There's none around you and you happen to be on this call, one, that's amazing. But two, start one, do something, because the UN as an entity can go as far as and do as much as the people do. So that's an important thing to just keep in mind. So also we hold space for hope and just for organizing to fulfill the actual needs of people.
So with our NGO Committee on Sustainable Development, we've had a motto for a while now: turn your passions into actions for change. So find your passion. And just, the SDGs are part of everything we're doing anyway.
Yes,
so find your passion. It's nothing new. It's just repackaged, and we need some, and they all are interconnected. So
I think you're absolutely right about that.
Thank you. And
What?
Jadea, I agree with you, but we need to really be passionate. Without passion, nobody succeeds. No matter whether they're an entrepreneur, a CEO, youth, whatever, you need the passion. So turn your passions into actions to change and get going, and find partners, because SDG 17 is how it will make it happen.
Margot, I want to say that what you're
So-
saying is absolutely right. I do want to give some time for Naleen to speak and answer our last question, but what you said was wonderful. We definitely need to take action. We need to know that this is not just wonderful talk to make us feel good, but this is a decade of action. And I want to let you know that as part of the steering committee, we have some events that we're working on to find practical steps for everyone to take action in the upcoming year. So thank you for that. I'm going to pass it right over to Aishu.
Oh,
Thank you, Cairo. And to all the other panelists, we will definitely give you a chance for interviews. We're definitely looking forward to hear to you. So yes, about due to time constraints, but fear not, we shall definitely get you. So thank you. Thank you once again, Cairo. I would like to ask our next question to Ms. Nahlin Ahmed. Ms. Nahlin, how do you think the UN can build back better together with civil society organizations and other stakeholders?
Thank you very much, Aishu. I've been extremely happy to hear the voices of so many people talking about issues that are so critical at this time. My office in particular works to actually facilitate the work of NGOs that have consultative status with ECOSOC. And we are close to about 6,000 organizations worldwide. And one of the things that these ECOSOC accredited NGOs actually are able to do is to participate at very high level UN events that we hold, not just the UN headquarters, but also globally. So for example, this year we just recently had the President of the General Assembly. He organized a special session of the General Assembly on COVID-19. And there were hundreds of NGOs who were in consultative status with ECOSOC that actually participated. Now, what we are seeing is that because of the pandemic, and we have been obliged to use all kinds of online platforms to facilitate the participation of NGOs, it has been an advantage and a disadvantage. And our goal, obviously, is to include the largest number of participants that we can possibly accommodate. Of course, the advantage is that on an online platform, we can have a huge number of people, as many as that can be accommodated. There are greater opportunities to actually get their voices heard, whether it is through questions, whether it is through submission of a statement, a recorded statement, and from all over the world. Whereas with in-person, meetings, what we actually have is lack of funding from the UN to facilitate the participation of NGO representatives, and of course from the NGO side that now more than ever they're really suffering. And they're unable to travel all the way to the UN or wherever we have a meeting. That is a huge handicap. And this year has been a learning opportunity for everybody. And we are also trying as best as we can to do as much outreach as possible to get information out and to get people involved in a lot of the activities of the United Nations. But I think we can definitely do a lot better. Next year, some of the main issues that we are going to have to tackle are definitely the climate. And then there is going to be a major initiative on food systems. It's a summit that the Secretary General is going to be organizing. Issues about jobs and poverty. These are ongoing issues and will take on greater meaning. So to have the voices of civil society in all these issues, whether it's youth groups or women's groups or intergenerational consultations, is going to be extremely critical for us. We don't take that for granted, but we definitely think that the UN cannot function without this partnership.
Thank you very much for your remarks. And absolutely, I think, we have all seen the importance of establishing these partnerships. And definitely, we'd like to thank you and your department, along with the Department of Global Communications, for facilitating the participation of NGOs in various fora. And definitely looking forward to continue the partnership. In fact, the Civil Society Conference in 2018, hosted by DGC, focused on people-centered multilateralism. So this is exactly the cornerstone of that notion. So thank you very much once again. Just following up with that question, Ms. Ahmed, in your opinion, what are some priority themes that could include civil society organizations in planning for 2021?
Well, as I mentioned, the priority areas, topics really are going to continue to be climate and food productions, food systems, the access to information to the NGOs, and how you're going to make use of that information for yourselves and for the United Nations. I think that for us moving forward, we really need to have a better understanding of the ways in which we can facilitate that participation, how to incorporate your voices. And I think that that's something that we might have to consider through hybrid and in-person engagement. But the areas that we are focusing on the substantive side are ones that are going to take on this very critical, let's say, importance for the United Nations, simply because of the fact that all over the world, everybody's feeling the economic devastation of the coronavirus. And therefore, we need everybody's input in order to build back better. It is not just going to be one size fits all. It is, the issue of resources, even the UN is feeling the issue of resources. So I can imagine how civil society is struggling. But again, there are ways that we have to consider how we can help each other. I don't think that anybody has one single solution, but it is definitely going to need everybody's involvement and partnership in order to build back better.
So well said, absolutely said. Oh, Aishu, was there something that you wanted to share before we go to question and answer?
Oh, no problem, no sec. I just wanted to thank Ms. Ahmed, and absolutely leave no one behind, which is part of the Sustainable Development Goals agenda. So thank you very much. And yes, I pass it over to you to lead our next segment.
Thank you so much, Aisha. I guess for me, I saw that we had so many of our panelists who wanted to answer some amazing questions. And so I have one question that please, if you have any questions, drop it in the chat. And I can be able to bring up your question. The question that I saw, and I would love for all of our panelists to answer, is what motivated you to keep doing the work that you've been doing in 2020? What kept you resilient? What kept you motivated?
I don't know who goes first, but I can definitely take that question. One of the things that this pandemic has actually exposed is the fact that the notion of who is essential in economy has been a revelation for many people, not to me and people like me who work with civil society, but to many others. And they, I think, came to the realization that the common person on the street who is making the economy run because, they're working in the grocery stores or in the drug stores or, performing things like, truck drivers taking the valuable food and medicine from one city to another. These have become really very, critical issues that have brought awareness to people about who really matters in society, but they don't have a voice. And they do get neglected. So in order for us to actually make their voices count in the future, and not to forget, this is one of the lessons of this pandemic that we need to carry forward, that we cannot forget. Everybody in society has to have a voice, and everybody is involved in building back better. We are not, going to have corporate giants only giving us the answers, or governments. The way we were doing business before may not work always in the future. And by the way, this pandemic is also an eye-opener in the sense that we may be looking at other pandemics down the line. So it is a question of really learning the lessons and carrying them forward and strengthening our understanding of how to be inclusive. Thank you.
In a brief word, I agree wholeheartedly with what Ms. Naleen has said. We really got to uplift the dignity of the people who do the things that enable us to live everyday life. By 2050, 80% of the world's population is going to live in cities, which means that the role of people who live in rural societies will become disproportionately crucial, because no society, no people, no city can live without food without the, the necessities of what it is to be a human being. And so like that is absolutely important, and we should be able to ensure that, the people who engage in life in such a way to enable the rest of us to live are able to live with dignity. And so I would just also just say what motivates me is just the fact that the world needs us. If not us, and who? We can't depend on other people to do for us what we're able to do for ourselves, but in working together, we're able to accomplish so much more.
Okay, so for me, basically, let me just say that what motivates me actually is because and when you are staying in a rural community, there's no how you will not want to do something for your community when you have the passion for it. So it's something that when I see so many problems, when I see so many waste, when I see so many children, suffering from a livelihood, there's a possibility that you just have to do something. So I took this as a challenge, and I think that is what has been giving me the motivation. And one key thing again is the act of mentoring. So there are a lot, I have learned how to make things happen and actually opening up to partnership and collaboration. And that is what has actually been motivating me. And since then, I think 2021 is going to be a year for us to look at how we can make all this conversation as an investment opportunities for every young people, because 2021 must make a mark for the community. It must make a mark for our rural community as well. Thank you very much.
I think for myself, it's really about building the partnerships and being open to who can support each other, and creating a space where that can happen, and we all can do that, and encouraging others to do the same. Just make those interlinkages. So again, I just say SDG 17 to me is like incredible because it works on all. And about the food, I mean, there are farmers in Africa right now who got bankrupt, thousands of them, and because they can't get the food that they had to market or whatever. I mean, it's just outrageous what's happened because of the pandemic. And what you were saying before about being prepared, we need to be better prepared, not just build back better, but know this can happen, and not just forget it once there's a vaccination in. We can say, okay, we're okay now. We need to really, as you were saying, Nalene, it's really it could happen again in 2 years. We need to be ready, so by working together in partnership, we can do that to support each other.
Absolutely right. Thank you so much, Margot. And we had one more question in the chat. I'm going to go ahead and bring that up. So the last question that we had, this is a question from Research Children East Africa submitted online. COVID-19 has slowed down the achievement of SDGs. What happens if we don't achieve the SDGs by 2030? And how can CSOs assist in rebuilding a post-COVID-19 world for the achievement of SDGs? A fantastic question. Is there anyone who would like to take that question?
We can do the best we can and just keep trying and keep going and encourage others to keep on going. And once we become aware of these issues, see how we can, again, make those connections to find support. But we must keep going. The MDGs happened. Don't know that they were that successful, but I was inspired by the Sustainable Development Goals, and I've been at the UN a long time. And so I say we must just keep going, do the best we can to leave no one behind.
I say amen to that.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
After you.
No, you go ahead. Go ahead.
Thank you. I was just saying, I totally agree with Margot. I also am not sure if I want to consider what world we'll be in if we don't achieve these SDGs. Like, as far as I'm concerned, it's like, it's full speed ahead. Let's go and do whatever we can to make sure that they are real. And again, like I said, in particular with climate change, like 2030 is too late. So, hey, if the SDGs don't happen, keep going. But if the SDGs don't happen, like everyone's gonna need like some really, heavy jackets for the winter time, for when like the climate's going up and down. We're all gonna have to learn how to dress in layers. The fashion industry is gonna there's so much that needs to happen. So where I'm putting my focus on is it's not like what happens if we don't achieve them. It's like, what can we do to make sure that we can and like do what the best we can with whatever it is that we have. And that's why working together is so important, because I have a little, you might have a little, but together we have a lot of time, energy, resources, etc. We'll get it done.
It's important. I think can I just add, it's important to listen, even though I'm interrupting you, but it's important to listen to all sides so we can hear what people need. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no problem. I think, you know, one of the things that happened with the MDGs, and those of you who are very young may probably not remember, but we did have a reevaluation of the MDGs and the course that they were taking in 2010, just to see how the effort should be redirected, because that is, you know, something that periodically one has to take note of how the actions that we're taking are actually helping us to achieve the goals or not achieving the goal. One of the other things that is going to become very critical, it's not like I'm making a big prediction, but I think there's an awareness all over the world that all the experiences of 2020 boil down to the interrelatedness and the interdependence of issues like pandemics and hunger, food production, job, climate change. All of this is interrelated. We can't deal with one in isolation, and therefore we need all the voices and all the aspects of this huge global problem that we're looking at, which is only going to get more critical as the years go by. And so that's the reason why we need everybody's voice and everybody's input.
Wonderful. Olumide, was there anything else that you would like to share?
Okay. So for me, I want us to actually remember. Yes. So for me, I just want us to that the SDG is actually blueprint, and to achieve, and for us to achieve a better and more sustainable future for all continents, different countries, and different nations. So we need to just keep working together, keep achieving together, because the SDG is one of these, the stepping stone for us to build forward better, like we are looking at it. Who knows what's going to happen in 2021? So the little you can do, if it is 3 or 4 goals you can achieve in your own local communities, start doing something. Don't wait. They said more action, less talk. That's how we can achieve the SDG. Thank you very much.
Yes, for the decade of action. So well said. All right, well, I'm going to pass it right over to Aishu.
Thank you very much, Cairo, and to our panelists. Before we close the panel, we would like to ask you our final poll question, and kindly ask Crystal to share the question with our participants. And we shall give you a minute to share your thoughts as DGC prepares for its communication priorities for 2021. These topics rise to the top. Which ones are most important to your organization? Please select the options of your choice. So we're seeing quite a few responses come on by.
And you can have multiple choices as well, as you can see.
Absolutely. You are not limited to one choice. Absolutely. And hearing from all of your positivity and optimism for the future, we definitely are eager to know what you have selected. Just give a few more seconds. And we're seeing quite a few different responses here. So very fascinating to hear your responses. So
Aishu, why don't you go ahead and share what the responses are once we're finished?
Absolutely. I think a few more, I think as soon as we end it. All right. So thank you very much to everyone who voted. Seeing quite a few of you have selected the top 2 choices, like human rights and climate change. So those are the top 2 priorities. Most certainly important. After human rights and climate change include the response to COVID-19 And following that would be the decade of action to deliver global goals and peace and security. Yes, both are very important as we're seeing also challenges to peace. So absolutely. And after that would be gender equality, recovery, growth, and mobilized economies, advocacy to combat misinformation alongside with other issues. So we have human rights and climate change, or the top two priorities that you wish for DGC to focus on communication for the next year. So we thank you for your responses. And as we close the panel, both Cairo and myself would like to thank all the panelists for their insightful remarks in creating a fair and equitable future for all. With that being said, I would like to pass the floor to Ms. Ava Diallo, who is the chief for the Department of Global Communications. Ms. Diallo, the floor is yours.
Hi, everybody. How's it going?
Hey.
I'm having a bit of a coughing bout. It's so cold. There's a lot of snow here. It's not the major snowstorm you were expecting, but yet it's freezing. I don't know if everybody knows it's a snow day at the UN. So the UN is actually closed. But because we are virtual, we have the opportunity to still see each other. So really, this has really been a really great a session. I've been behind the scenes, just listening to everything, and really just enjoying all the discussions and all the experiences that have been shared. Everybody did such a fantastic job. I really want to thank all the moderators. Let's give them a round of applause. All the moderators are all the youth, DGC youth representatives from the steering committee. And this is the new team, at least some of them. And they've been supported by some of the alumni like Juan, Ashu, and Jadea, and Caitlin. But I think they did an awesome job. They rock. So I can hardly wait to see what this new team is going to do in 2021. I want to thank all of you for being here because it is a snow day. And thank you to all the speakers for really sharing all your resources, all your great experiences. I've really learned so much listening in the background. And, I want to give regrets well, first of all, greetings from Maher Nasser, our director of the division, from Ramu Damadaran, our deputy director, also from the Outreach division, and Andy Gitao, who is the new chief of the section, the Civil Society Advocacy and Special Events section. She actually was on for the first half an hour, but today there's so many meetings as usual. This virtual world gives us an opportunity to create so many awesome events, but the challenge is that sometimes many of them are happening at the same time. So Maher was supposed to be here to give us closing words, but unfortunately he couldn't make it. He really wanted to be here. And he kept emailing me, but unfortunately he's on another panel, and it's a town hall with our Undersecretary General, Melissa Fleming. So they all are sending their warm greetings to everybody across the screen. Well, I mean, one of the things I want to mention that maybe people are asking about, and this is mostly for the NGOs who have a status with us, annual review is not going to be the way it used to be. You should have received something. Annual review has become biennial. So we're going to be doing it every 2 years, but you should have received an email from the generic email undgccso@un.org asking you to take a survey and to report just what activities you've been doing during COVID-19. And if you haven't, please just email us and we'll send you that link. Also, we are in the process of finalizing the calendar of advocacy events for 2021. So that would include civil society briefings like this, our youth platform, the chat series, as well as any orientations or the communications workshops we do with the Global NGO Executive Committee. We hope that we can finalize that by the end of December and share that with you. So, are you guys ready for 2021?
Emphatically.
Yes.
No,
Yes, yes, yes.
Yes.
I hope so. So am I, and so is DGC, Civil Society Unit. As many of you all have said, we want to partner with civil society in the coming year. We want to come onto your space. It doesn't always have to be at the UN space, as Margot Lazaro said. We want to continue working with our colleagues like Naleen Ahmed to strengthen UN and civil society engagement. And also, I like what Margot said. We want to support one another. We want to embrace SDG 17 and really work together in 2021 to continue addressing COVID-19, but to work together to build back better, and really not to do that in our individual spaces, but together. So I really want to thank everybody for being here today. I don't have much to say. You said it all. I want to commend the moderators again, all the young folks, and then also all our partners across the screen, everybody for joining. It's been a pleasure. Looking forward to seeing you in 2021. Let's do this. Let's work together. Let's build better. Let's create that space where all of us can work in collaboration. Thank you so much. See you soon.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much,
Bye-bye.
everyone.
Thank you. Thank
Happy
you.
New Year.
It's great.
Bye.
Thank
Happy
you.
holidays.
Happy
Bye-bye.
holiday.
Happy
Bye.
Happy holidays. Stay well.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, good evening, and good night.
Okay, I'm unmuting people as they leave on if they want to say goodbye to us.
Hasta luego. 再见.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Everyone.
Happy holidays.
Bye.
Happy
holiday.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Happy
holiday.
Happy
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Happy holidays. Bye.
Happy holidays.
Happy New Year.
Great job to the speakers, to the moderators, and to the DGC team.
Thanks, Ashu. Thank you, Carol.
Great
Thank you,
job,
everybody.
AG Cairo. Great job.
Thank you all to the great speakers we had today. I learned so much.
Thank you,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thanks, Margo.
Appreciate
Thank
you
you,
again.
everyone.
Loves all.
Catherine, Megan,
Bye-bye.
great job.
Thank you.
Fanny, happy holidays.
Bye-bye, from Suriname.
Go team.
Oh,
Go
hey,
team.
Suriname. Good to see you, Suriname.
Bye-bye from Suriname. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays. Thank you for everyone from really tuning in from all the different time zones.
Yeah, thank you so much.
It's a little bit later. I'm very happy to be with you. Stay safe, please.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay, guys, I'm gonna screenshot the 3 pages so everyone smile because I can't tell who, like, no one will be able to tell which page they're on. So just
I've been
cheese.
screenshotting myself.
Ready?
Can you send it?
Yeah.
Can you send it to us? Those who were the speakers? Can you send it?
Yeah,
on the
I'll send
photo?
it in the group chat. Ready?
Well, no. Send it to us by later so we can post it.
I'll send it, Margo. I got it.
Thank you, Hawa.
Thank you. This was so much fun. I miss y'all.
Okay, next page.
Thank you, Hawa.
I love how everyone's just like smiling and explicitly.
We don't know what to do anymore.
Okay.
We're good. We're good.
Thank
Yeah.
you, Caitlin.
God,
So
thank
let me
you.
double check.
Howard, let me know.
Big shout out
we
to
have to smile.
Valentina and Stefan
Thank
and
you.
all the volunteers.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Megan,
you,
great
Megan.
job.
Bye.
Valentina.
Yep,
Oh,
Megan, our
thank you so much.
fabulous intern.
Thank you, Victoria, for being the clone blueprint for everyone.
Victoria.
Victoria,
Like an
you
episode
were
of
all
Black
over
Mirror.
the place.
All the
All
Victorias.
the Victorias.
To all the Victorias.
No, you did fantastic technically. Awesome.
Thanks, Swati.
Thanks, thanks, Ashu. Thank you, Ashu. Thank you, Ashu.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Marco.
Ashu.
Thank you, Carol, for our panel. Thank you.
Yes, Catherine, great opening. And of course, the Queen, great closing.
Thank you,
Yes.
Catherine was fabulous. Fabulous.
Catherine.
Woo!
Thank you,
I see
Crystal.
some
Thank you,
people are still
Victoria.
saying thank you.
Patrick,
Margo.
Patrick, funny.
Thank you, Swati. This is the after party.
Yeah, some people are still saying thank you,
Yes.
so we're leaving it on just a
Mr.
little bit
Climate,
on.
nice to meet you.
No, thank you, Mr.
Climate.
Climate.
Mr.
Yes.
Climate, always retweeting. Thank you.
Yes, nice to see you, Olumide.
Appreciate
it.
Thank you.
Patrick, yeah, I have Patrick here.
Oh, this is wonderful. This is like the first call, right? All of the people, the first call, like, and we've been continuing throughout. So it's good, great to see the momentum.
Some of the calls have had these where they just stay on.
Also in
people like this after party.
Yeah.
They like it at the after party. You know, the after the.
Absolutely, the after.
Alan loves an after party.
Yeah.
How are you?
Please say
great,
something
thank you.
about the vaccine.
Thank you. Great,
I'm
great,
out. Love y'all. Be safe.
Bye. I'll send the picture.
I love those earrings.
Thank you.
Yes.
Oh, my cousin. Thank you so much.
Really?
Okay, Crystal, I think we're gonna call it a day.
Okay. Oh, yes.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Enjoy your snow day.
Goodbye.
Bye, everybody. Bye.
Pressing in. Bye.
Bye, Linnea.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Nancy. Thanks for tuning in.
Okay, end is happening right now.
Are we meeting the team or no?
Well, I would answer you, except we're still live. So.
Bye.